Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Cyclone Chasers update today, the 27th of March 2017. My name's Chris Nitzo. This update sponsored by our major sponsor, Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. And we're talking tonight about Tropical Cyclone Debbie. The latest of the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre forecast has the system tracking basically southwest, maybe a little bit more of a westerly component to that southwest motion, and whacking the coast right in through here around that, anywhere from Bowen down to around Proserpine, possibly as far south as Bloomsbury. At this stage, not quite south enough for you Mackay residents to be too concerned, but I tell you what, every time this little blight has been moving westwards, it always drifts southwards too. So let's hope that trend doesn't continue, because the last thing we need is a Category 4 hitting the Mackay city. As it is already, Mackay is suffering through southeasterly winds, a lot of beach erosion, and generally some winds gusting up to about 80 to 100 kilometres an hour in the region. So it's already quite bad there for Mackay. We don't really want it to get too much worse. So at this stage, the system, as I say, the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre track forecast all the way through into landfall here around the Whitsunday Islands and then into the Airlie Beach, Proserpine, Chute Harbour. That sort of area at the moment is what we're expecting. Now you can see the system makes landfall, and this is the key here, around about 10 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. This is not good news. Looking at the structure of the system, it's not the best looking Category 3 cyclone you've ever seen. It's got fairly large structure of its eye here, and we've got an eye that tries to form and then it gets clouded over again. It's a very large central feature here in this system, and it really hasn't shown signs of wanting to tighten up at any time soon. You've got a lot of very strong convection here just on that northwestern edge, and you'll get convective flare-ups tonight for sure across the system. Look, the system should increase its intensity overnight with a diurnal maximum for convection. The problem, I guess, is trying to figure out exactly where these areas of maximum winds are, and that's certainly a problem for us here at Oz Cyclone Chasers, because we obviously need to position ourselves somewhere where we're going to get the best sort of data. And at the moment, this system is posing a threat because it's not your typical tropical cyclone. It's not your very tight symmetrical system. It's not your system that creates a very tight maximum radius or maximum diameter of winds across the center, right around the center of the system. So it's really posing some problems for us in analysis terms, and I'm sure it's posing a fair few questions for you folk in terms of what effects you can experience from it. You can see its outflow extending all the way through here, through Rolling Stone up towards Ingham. This is all outflow cloud, by the way. We're not too concerned about that producing any sort of rainfall. But you can also see these nice little bands coming across here on the, like a buzz saw, if you like. This is beautiful. This is what we love to see in tropical cyclones. This little buzz saw going on just outside of the main circulation. So interesting stuff for sure. All right. So if we take a look here at the system on the Bureau of Meteorology imagery, the latest we've got here, we can see a severe Category 3 tropical cyclone. Now, they are expecting it to intensify to a 4 overnight, just like we would expect it to, and then hitting the coast probably right on high tide, and that's the bad news here. If you're south of that, you're getting smashed with a very high tide and a storm surge. If you're north of that, you're just getting the very strong winds, and then obviously as the system moves further inland, the winds shift to become more northerly, and we'll give you a look at what that does to the sea level rise across this region too. So just because you're just north of the system doesn't mean you won't get some type of storm tide, but it certainly won't be anywhere near the intensity of the storm tide further south. And that storm tide can actually move further southwards, and you've got Mackay, which should also be under the influence of those wind-driven waves piling that water up at the same time as your high tide comes through. So very interesting little scenario here, where it's not just the winds that are posing the threat. It's actually, in fact, probably just as strong a threat, if not stronger, from the storm tide across this coastal region. So what are the computer models telling us? Well, we've got a situation where the system could make landfall anywhere here on the GFS ensemble. Now, I have to say the GFS ensemble has probably been the pick of the models so far. Now, this model was always the one expecting a more southerly motion of this system, always the one that was developing the system a lot more broadly than the others, and was always the one that was hitting the coast more in the central coast with Sundays rather than the Herbert Burdekin. So it's certainly been much more on the ball than a lot of the other more reputable computer guidance through this period. So looking at the GFS here for this last stretch, you can see it's expecting to hit the coast around that Bowen area all the way south to just north of Mackay with our outliers. So you're looking here at probably around Guthalungra would be the furthest north, and that would be a long way north. The system could make landfall, and more likely making landfall here around the Bowen to Proserpine region is where most of the computer model members are clustered. Looking at the latest European model, we can see that all of the Euro members have the system moving from about as far north as Bowen, so nothing gets a little any further north than Bowen in terms of strikes, and gets all the way down through here into just north of Mackay with the landfall. And you can see the good news here is that a few models have already made landfall by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, so a couple of them are expecting the system to get a move on, while the vast majority of computer model members still have the system just offshore. Now you can see by the time we get to 10 p.m. tomorrow, you can see this area here just from Bowen basically all the way down to just north of Mackay is where the system is expected to make landfall, and continue tracking westwards into 36 hours by 48 hours, so that's in 2 days' time. So we're looking here 10 o'clock on Wednesday. You can see the system stalling now over central inland Queensland, and then certainly by Thursday, as the system pushes further south and southeast, we're looking at some very heavy rainfall moving further south on the coastline here of the central and southeast corner of Queensland. So it's going to pose a fairly significant high rainfall risk as it moves southeastwards as well. But certainly that's not the topic of our conversation tonight, of course. We've got a Category 4 on the coast, so we're not going to really talk about rain because that's a distinct, far-reaching third threat that pales into insignificance compared to all the others. Looking at the UK Met Model 2, you've got this cut-off right around Bowen. Bowen's that 20-degree south line here, so Bowen is the furthest north outlier. So that means that the most northern model has the system crossing up around Bowen. The most southern model has the system crossing around Mackay. Once again, very tight clustering of computer models around Proserpine, Airlie Beach, and so on and so forth. So we've got a very tight cluster here, and most model members are making landfall by 10 o'clock in the morning, so probably looking at a 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock impact onto the coastline of the course, the actual eye of the system. So we have excellent model agreement here on the final track and trajectory of this system now. There's not too much doubt as to how far north or how far south this will go. This stage north of Mackay, and more than likely around Bowen or southwards is the expectation, with the greatest concentration of computer model members right here on this little pocket of land that juts out around Cannon Vale, Airlie Beach, Shute Harbour, Hamilton Island. We take a look at the system's eye on radar, and let me just get rid of satellite because it's just cluttering up the image there a little bit. We can certainly see on radar very distinct eye feature, and that's exactly what you'd expect. It is drifting very, very slowly to the west, but I'll tell you what, it's extremely slow drift to the west. Now, the system centre, as I say, is expected to move in a west-southwesterly direction, broadly in a west-southwesterly direction. Look, there'll be little wobbles further to the north, there'll be little wobbles further to the south. Eventually, though, the system is going to drift into this area of the coastline. Once again, as I say, Bowen, Abbott Point, probably about as far north, and all the way down to about Bloomsbury is the expectation. And once we get down any further, Mackay would be a very outside sort of 10% chance. But certainly this section of coastline here is where we're seeing most computer models congregated on. So if we take a look at wind speeds and the expected directions as we look at this central part of Queensland now, we're looking here at the Access R computer model, the very latest that's just come out from the Bureau of Meteorology. We've got the model showing us fairly strong 50 to 55 knot winds right around that Shute Harbour area, and then that's at 10 p.m. As we go to 1 a.m. you can see those very strong winds making their way just a little bit further to the west, and you can see the system really ramping up in intensity here in terms of what it's providing for the coastline just up here in that central part of Queensland. Now, on the northern side of that, we've got southwesterly winds about 25 to 30 knots going through Bowen overnight, and possibly getting up to 30 to 35 65 knots, and then the eye of the cyclone ends up coming over the top of Hamilton Island about 7 a.m. in the morning, and then by 10 a.m. in the morning it's now over the top of the mainland around Dingo Beach, between, as I say, Bowen and Proserpine. At this stage is where the computer models are really honing in on that eye of the cyclone making landfall. As we go to 1 p.m, once the system's over land, you can see that it's tracking basically west or west, slightly west-northwest even, across land, and you can see these northerly winds now piling on the water levels onto this section of coastline. So places like Airlie Beach, for example, you're looking at probably 35 to 45 knot winds coming in from the north after the system has crossed the coast. And you can see the strongest winds for the northern parts of these central coast regions, like for example Bowen, are going to be once the system has crossed the coast. So there's a very strong little period of winds overnight tonight and into early tomorrow. Then the eye crosses the coast. Because it's moving so slowly and the eye is so large, the lull period could be as long as a couple of hours for parts of this coastline. So you could be looking at a 2 or 3 even hours of very, very light wind speeds. Now let's talk about why 10 o'clock is such an important time. So the big issue we've got, of course, looking at Chute Harbour's tides to start with, is that we've got a very, very high tide tonight, 10:30 p.m. So already tonight, of about 3.5 metres, already tonight we're going to see some elevated water levels with those southeasterlies piling up that water into this region. Now, on top of that, we've got another 3.74 metre tide, so even a larger tide tomorrow at 10:47 a.m. Remember what time that cyclone's coming across the coast? Around that 10 o'clock time frame. So that's why it's going to be really important, the actual time frame of the system, as well as what the winds are doing around that system at the moment. And that's what we're saying. It's a very complex structured system at the moment. It's not your very typical tight symmetrical eye, and it does have a destructive wind radius which is much larger than what we would climatologically expect from a tropical cyclone of this nature. Even places further to the south aren't immune from the storm surge. This is the Mackay Harbour here, 5.9 metres tomorrow at 10:54 a.m. as well. And once again, these places are getting southeasterlies. These places are getting onshore winds the whole time. And so those onshore winds, while they may not be quite as strong as they are a little bit further north, you're still looking at a situation where you're piling that water level on top of itself, on top of those pretty high astronomical tides. Okay, folks, so looking at the bomb chart for tomorrow. Now, this is rainfall for tomorrow. Now, you can see the opportunity for some moderate to heavy falls from Townsville southwards. Let's be honest, Townsville. Anyway, the model does show Townsville, so we've got to cover it. So Townsville southwards through to about Gladstone, the opportunity for some moderate to heavy falls. Lighter falls further northwards and lighter falls further southwards. But this area here around that Proserpine with Sundays, Bowen, Airlie Beach, down towards Mackay, Bloomsbury, Seaforth, Cape Hillsborough, all these sort of areas are expecting to see some very significant rainfall. The more south or just south of the forecast track is perhaps where you're going to see the most significant rainfall, and especially along the ranges where not only have you got that cyclonic lifting, or what we call the synoptic scale lifting, but we've also got orographic lifting. So that's the not only are you getting the squeezing effect of the atmosphere synoptically, but you're also getting a squeezing effect of the mountain ranges, which is further enhancing the squeezing, and so you're getting ultra squeezing effects that are creating massive, massive rainfalls across this area. So you can see here up to 300, possibly even more millimetres over 24 hours expected between 10 o'clock tonight and 10 o'clock tomorrow night. Looking at Wednesday then, we're left with some moderate to heavy falls still on the central Queensland coast, because remember, you're getting a nice little north to northeasterly here, so bringing in a fair bit of moisture. And further to the north though, fairly isolated type stuff once we get north of about Townsville, and not too much happening for northern Queensland. But this is where the focus of activity goes tomorrow, and from 10 p.m. tomorrow through to 10 p.m. Wednesday, out here in the Central Highlands and coalfields and the northeastern parts of the Central Western districts. So quite a significant rain period expected here for these regions. Obviously, flooding is a potential opportunity and possibility for these areas. Looking further southwards, though, around Gladstone, Bundy, Rocky, these sort of areas, maybe not so much Rocky, but Gladstone, Bundy, Maryborough even, looking at the possibility of moderate to heavy falls coming in. See this beautiful little feeder line here coming in from the northwest down to the north, and then bang in, rotating into the circulation. So that there could cause some fairly heavy rainfall right on the coast too. Looking at elsewhere across the state here, isolated showers and thunderstorms further southwards, and very isolated showers and storms up here in the North Peninsula. On Thursday, ex-tropical cyclone Debbie will merge with a trough system tracking southeastwards across the state, and you can see some very heavy falls, Central Highlands and coalfields again, and then you're also seeing fairly heavy falls across the southeast corner of the state. Once again, nothing too spectacular here, but the accumulation of rainfall over a couple of days, so you put 50 to 100 millimetres over a couple of days over the same areas, you're going to get a pretty decent drop in many areas here across the southeast, and you'll get a few rivers flowing anyway. By Friday, the trough begins exiting the coast here, and we could see some very heavy falls around southeast Queensland at this stage, around that Brisbane, Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast area, and that will finally be the end of ex-tropical cyclone Debbie and its reign over Queensland. Folks, at the moment we're set up in Bowen, but we will likely move a little bit further southwards as the forecast track has dictated to us. And we are currently transmitting live weather data, but we won't be transmitting live video to you for a little bit of time yet. So if you want to check out the live weather data, head over here to the current chase page. So there's a chase page up there on your menu, just there. Click on that and have a look at all the weather data that we've got. Now we've got basically maxes and mins from our weather station on here to let you know what's been going on. But obviously if you're a subscriber, you get up to the minute weather data, so it updates every single minute of the night once we're in position for this new place. So to do that, if you're a subscriber, head over to the current chase page, and that's this page here. Click on that, and down there you'll have a table, and that table will be transmitting every minute updates overnight as to how this system is progressing. Now we will be moving, so there will be a data outage while we're moving the weather station to a new location. But please utilise that and understand what it's showing you, and you'll be able to see fairly clearly what the trends are in and around the area that we'll be visiting. Subscribers eventually will have a video live stream for you too, and if I need to take measurements from outside, you'll be coming out with me and having a look at the area around where we go. So that'll be definitely interactive, and I'm sure you'll get a very good feel of what conditions will be like as we go, particularly in the morning. Once that system is crossing the coast and has crossed the coast, it looks like where we're going to go, that's where things are going to get quite hairy. So a very interesting little live stream there. For those of you that aren't subscribers, we'll have another live stream. It'll be a very static live stream, but you'll get a good idea at what the conditions are out there. And that'll be available on our Facebook page, Facebook Live, so facebook.com/AusCycloneChasers, and keep an eye on our live video that we'll probably start broadcasting from early tomorrow morning for you, if you're not a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, you might find that the static stream might start for you overnight tonight sometime. All right, folks, have a great time, have a great day, have a great night, have a safe night, more importantly. Look after your neighbours, look after yourselves. We'll talk to subscribers again in the morning. Otherwise, we'll talk to you folk tomorrow evening after it's all over. Take care, everyone, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.